Good evening, and welcome to today's session. Tonight, we are privileged to hear from our speaker, who will address one of the most pressing and complex issues facing our nation: racism. This deeply entrenched social ill has woven itself into the very fabric of our society, creating division, pain, and injustice. Our speaker will share insights and approaches from two powerful perspectives: the Bahá'í Faith and the scientific community. By integrating these perspectives, we can develop a comprehensive strategy to solve and heal the wounds of racism, ultimately building a more just and inclusive society. Throughout this talk, our speaker will explore the teachings of the Bahá'í Faith, which emphasize the oneness of humanity and the elimination of all forms of prejudice. Additionally, the speech will delve into the scientific understanding of racism as a systemic issue that requires multidisciplinary approaches to address effectively. The hope is that this speech will inspire us to examine the importance of addressing racism, ignite a sense of urgency, and encourage each one of us to become active participants in the fight against racism. Together, we can take meaningful steps towards progress and create a society where every individual is treated with dignity, respect, and equality. Thank you for joining us, and let's welcome our speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today, I stand before you to address one of the most pressing and complex issues facing our nation: racism. This deeply entrenched social ill has woven itself into the very fabric of our society, creating division, pain, and injustice. To effectively combat racism, we must draw upon both the wisdom and teachings of the Bahá'í Faith and the insights of the scientific community. Together, these perspectives offer a comprehensive approach to solving and healing this issue. Racism is a multifaceted problem that manifests in various forms, from overt discrimination to subtle biases. It affects every aspect of life, including education, employment, healthcare, and criminal justice. The scientific community has long recognized racism as a social illness that inflicts profound emotional and psychological harm on individuals and communities. The Bahá'í Faith, founded by Baha'u'llah, emphasizes the oneness of humanity and the elimination of all forms of prejudice. Baha'i teachings assert that racism is a spiritual disease that must be eradicated to achieve true unity and justice. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i Faith, described racial prejudice as the most vital and challenging issue confronting in the community and society. The Baha'i writings call for the establishment of unity and justice through love, empathy, and understanding. The scientific community, including sociologists and psychologists, views racism as a systemic issue that requires comprehensive solutions. Researchers have identified the following key aspects of addressing racism. 1. Complexity. Racism is deeply rooted in social structures and cultural norms. 2. Resistance. Efforts to combat racism often face significant opposition. 3. Scope. Racism's impact is widespread, affecting various sectors of society. 4. Resources. Addressing racism requires substantial resources, including education and policy reforms. 5. Emotional impact. Racism causes emotional and psychological harm that needs healing. Several scholars have provided valuable insights into the importance of addressing racism. Claiborne Carson, an African-American historian, reminds us that the struggle for racial justice is ongoing and requires continuous effort and dedication. Laron A. Martin, an African-American religious studies scholar, emphasizes that understanding King's teachings is essential for addressing the deep-rooted issues of racism and inequality in our society. Ralph Richard Banks, an African-American legal scholar, states, racial inequality and division have long been the fault line of American society. Addressing racial inequity is essential to sustaining our nation and furthering its democratic aspirations. To solve racism, we must focus on systemic changes and policy reforms. Systemic changes meaning reforming institutions such as education, criminal justice, and employment to ensure equality and fairness. Through legislation, enacting and enforcing laws that protect individuals from racial discrimination and hate crimes. Through education, promoting awareness and understanding through educational programs that teach the history and impact of racism. Economic equity, meaning addressing economic disparities by providing equal access to resources and opportunities for marginalized communities. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Bahá'í Faith, addressed the issue of racism extensively. In his book, The Advent of Divine Justice, he wrote, "As to racial prejudice, the corrosion of which, for well nigh a century, has bitten into the fiber and attacked the whole social structure of American society. Healing racism requires addressing the emotional and psychological wounds it inflicts. Emotional and psychological healing, providing mental health support and creating safe spaces for individuals to share their experiences. Restoring relationships, fostering dialogue and reconciliation processes to mend broken relationships between different racial and ethnic groups. Cultural healing, celebrating diversity, and reclaiming cultural heritage to restore a sense of identity and pride." The Bahá'í Faith and scientific perspectives complement each other in addressing racism. The Bahá'í teachings on unity, justice, and empathy provide a moral and spiritual framework for addressing the root causes of racism. Meanwhile, scientific approaches offer practical strategies for implementing systemic changes and promoting healing. In conclusion, racism is undeniably one of the most challenging issues facing our nation. To effectively combat it, we must draw upon both the spiritual wisdom and teaching of the Bahá'í Faith and the scientific insights of our time. By integrating these perspectives, we can create a comprehensive strategy to solve and heal the wounds of racism, ultimately building a more just and inclusive society. Let us commit ourselves to this noble cause, working together to create a world where every individual is treated with dignity, respect, and equality. Thank you.